really have to look at why that is.
Well, Geert Wilders is well known for his outspoken views. Here are some of his past comments. He says, "I've had enough of Islam in the Netherlands. Let not one more Muslim immigrate. Islam is not a religion, it's an ideology, the ideology of a retarded culture." He's also said he has a problem with Islamic tradition, culture, ideology, but not with Muslim people. And he's declared we have to stop the tsunami of Islamization. It's affecting our heart, our identity, our culture. Certainly some very inflammatory language there. Mr. Afshar, how does it make you feel when you hear these words?
Well, it's not very strange for me. If you just replace the verb Islam by Jew, you could have a lot of documents from the former century. But if you compare Europe to America, in America no one would prevent a religious group by implementing their religious tradition. Let me tell you, we have since 40 years difficulty to have a cemetery here for Muslims. And no one in America would understand why such an issue would rise to a problem. You have even very strange behavior like the Amish, who like to live with the tradition of 18th century, and no one takes care about them. They let them live. There's another form of tolerance against the religious minority than in Europe. In Europe, the tendency is not to integrate the Muslim community, but to assimilate them. Just as a Swiss writer has told, Max Frisch spoke about the issue, and he told in a book he has written, they asked for a labor force and people came. And that's the main issue. People can't let their religion aside. The religion is a part of their identity. You can't say, I don't hate Muslim, but I hate Islam. Whoever hates Islam hates people.
It does seem to be something of an anomaly indeed. Bertrand Hendricks, what do you make of that?
Well, I think it's a rather strenuous exercise on the part of Wilders to say, I'm only attacking a political ideology. He doesn't want to accept that Islam is one of the great religions. And I'm not attacking Muslims. I mean, that is a very strenuous distinction that is not felt by any Muslim. Every Muslim clearly feels that it is aimed at them. When you talk about a tsunami of Muslims, as one politician said very rightly these days, people, it's not Qurans that are imported, it's people that immigrate. And so you can't make this distinction. But he's trying to peddle the tired theory of a kind of Muslim conspiracy that is, you know, a kind of latter-day repeat of the Turks before the gates of Vienna, wanting to take over, you know, in the sense that we must make sure that we are becoming minority, and then we are going to impose Sharia and all this kind of thing. All this is you know, is such a rubbish, and I think many people are aware of this. But he is surfing on this wave of fear and insecurity in a time of crisis, globalization having reached the point where people are questioning themselves about what is Dutch identity, and then you have a wave of immigrants who predominantly come also from the same cultural area, and who in the past, you know, there has been a kind of tension between the civilizations, if you wish. And he is trying to construe that argument that really you basically can't trust Muslims, because even his intellectual sidekick and speechwriter would even made the accusation recently that if there is no such things as moderate Islam, a moderate Muslim is somebody who is using taqiyya, you know, hiding his true intentions in order to take over. I mean, this is such a weird conspiracy theory, and the fact that it gets any traction is a rather sorry state of comment to the situation in Holland, actually, at the moment. But it is not limited to Holland.
Robin Simcox, by giving someone such as Geert Wilders such a public platform, does it not risk alienating people who are very good citizens?
But, I mean, who's giving the public platform? He's in the public platform because to a certain amount of Dutch people he's popular. I mean, I don't see how you can avoid that. I think you've just got to look at the issues around it. And if I could just quickly come back on a point that's been made a couple of times now about Muslims being the new Jews. This is a myth. Muslims have complete freedom of religion in Europe. I mean, the Jews were under Nazi Germany were gassed and killed. Nothing remotely comparable is even thought about happening, where Muslims have exactly the same freedom of religion as Europe amends to all minority religions.
Okay, well, we've been touching on Europe because it does appear to be something of a trend across the whole continent, this right-wing party gaining significant support. The European Parliament elections of 2009, for example, proved a major victory for the supporters of the far right. And as we've been discussing, the Netherlands in June, elections left a coalition needing the support of the right wing. Just last month in Sweden, the far right made its debut in the parliament with over 5% of the votes, winning 20 seats. In France, the National Front did well in the regional elections earlier this year with up to 12% of the vote. Far-right parties have been enjoying similar successes in Italy, Switzerland, Belgium, Norway and Bulgaria. Well, many of these countries are famous for their liberalism. Mr. Hendricks, return to you. Do you think that they are simply exploiting the circumstances of the time, as you mentioned just a little earlier?
Yes, and I would hope it would be a passing phenomenon, and I think it will. But what is so dangerous of the present political situation is that now we are going to get a government with a very tiny minority of one seat, 76 out of 150, tolerated by Geert Wilders. And he is not taking any responsibility, but he is sitting at the center of power, and so he can have this very easy condition. And the difficulty and the danger is that because the Christian Democrats desperately want to cling to power, have acceded to his demands with the Conservative Party, and that as a result of this, you know, the ideas of Wilders somehow become socially acceptable, somehow become mainstream, that it is somehow politically correct nowadays to consider all these things as a legitimate opinion instead of the kind of incitement and discrimination that it basically is. And I think that is a difficult situation. And we have seen in Denmark...
Mr. Simcox, is it a passing phenomenon?
Well, I don't think we can really put it like that, because these things we've been talking about, Wilders isn't the first person to mention them. I think it's a manifestation that's been going on for a long time, where earlier there was a reference to Europe assimilating Muslims rather than integrating them. I actually think the opposite's true. In Europe, a lot of the discussion at the moment is how certain ethnic minority communities we haven't managed to integrate them at all. And I think that is a pressing, bigger problem. How do we begin that process of making, for example, Muslims in Europe integrate into Europe better? And I think Wilders goes about it the wrong way. But that's one of the things that I think what he says resonates with people on a larger base.
Mr. Afshar, what do you know of immigrants' experience? Do they have a hard time assimilating, integrating? Should they even be assimilating?
No, the problem of the immigrants has arisen in recent years, because 30 years ago no one cared about such issues. Now in our days, really the issue of Islam has become a political issue for a European country, but it's not only on the personal level like some European politicians, it's also a strategic level. After the breakdown of the Soviet Union, Europe needed a new picture of an enemy, and the fear of communism was replaced systematically. Just remember Huntington and hundreds of other scholars and scientists and think tanks. A new fear of Islam was created, and you see what happened. Not Islamic armies are threatening now European country or American territory, but European armies are staying and fighting in Islamic countries. So when you speak about democracy, integration, human rights, you have to ask it, does it have any credibility in the world? Do the people believe you when you bomb countries and say we are bringing you freedom, we are bringing you human rights? No Afghan family can understand why a village should be bombed.